and ancestral lands of the Ramaytush-speaking Ohlone people who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. Strut would like to pay our respects to the Ramaytush Ohlone elders, past, present, and future. Cool. All right, so just a little bit of housekeeping. Please put your phones on silent. The restrooms are in the back. If you go towards where they're selling those awesome journals and yank a left, there will be 2 of them. Yeah, they're waving the journals. There we go. We all know where to go. So if the restroom is locked, that means somebody is in it. So just wait patiently. And the first one is far more accessible. If anybody has accessibility needs, please cede way to that person for that restroom. All right, I'm now going to introduce Hunter from Litquake. Let's give him a warm round of applause, everybody.
Hi, everyone. I will be very quick. First of all, thank you all for being here. You make Litquake happen, and you make these events that showcase incredible writing possible. So thank you so much for your support. I want to thank Strut for also hosting us. Litquake would be nothing without the generous donations of people who run these amazing spaces in San Francisco. So please support Strut if you can. And that is it. Let's get started. I am going to welcome up your host from Foglifter, Tawhid Zaman.
Hello, fabulous folks. Wait, can I get a hello back? Hello, fabulous folks. All right. Welcome to the Foglifter 7.2 issue launch. My name is Tawhid Zaman. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm honored to welcome you today. Thanks so much to Litquake and to Strut for hosting us. We're really grateful to have this as our home when we can come together in person. How exciting is that? First, I want to mention that we have a fabulous ASL interpreter, Kirk Hamlin. Can we get Kirk round of applause? So please stay quiet during the reading so that their job is as easy as possible, but please cheer extra hard between readings for each of our readers. I stood here 1 year ago as a reader myself, so I know how nerve-wracking this can be. Since then, I was honored to serve as guest editor for the current issue and now as an assistant editor for creative nonfiction. I've seen firsthand the caliber of queer writing that we get from across the country. And let me tell you, you are in for a treat tonight. If you're new to Foglifter, we are a biannual journal of today's most dynamic, urgent, and delightful queer writing. We're a space where LGBTQIA+ writers celebrate, mourn, rage, and embrace. We're a space where a lot of great writing happens, including writing that has won awards in recent literary journals. We won a literary journal prize from the Whiting Foundation, and we are also so excited to be celebrating our 14th issue tonight. If that excites you, I have some good news. There are a couple of ways you too can be involved in Foglifter. Once this reading ends, you won't want to wait another minute before submitting your work to us. We're open for submissions for our next journal until November 1st. We really hope you feel inspired and uplifted by our writers tonight. So please send us your weirdest, your tenderest, most transgressive, and exuberant work. We're also looking for passionate volunteers who will help us publish today's most urgent queer voices. So if you're a queer or trans writer and want to get even more involved in Foglifter, we're taking applications for assistant fiction editor. So come chat with us in the back and please apply by November 1st. It would be awesome if you all could please take a minute to fill out your audience survey. That's how we make sure that we're doing the best possible job serving you as our community. Please find us on social media. We're at Foglifter Press on all platforms. Please do silence your phones as well. When you're done with your surveys, please bring them to us in the back, to Louisa and Maya. Can you all give us a wave? Okay, thank you. And let's get started. All right. I am so excited to begin introducing the fabulous and talented contributors to this issue. First up, we'll welcome Edward Gunawan. Edward is the author of 2 chapbooks, The Way Back, which is forthcoming from Foglifter Press at a release party on November 10th at El Rio, so find us there, and is a winner of the Starter Riot Prize. He has also published the chapbook Press Play from Sweet Lit. He has completed over 25 feature films and shorts as a writer, producer, actor, and/or director. A queer immigrant from Indonesia and of Chinese heritage, he now resides on unceded Ohlone land in Oakland, California. Please join me in welcoming Edward Gunawan.
Hello, oh my God. It is so packed. I'm thrilled and nervous to be here. So quickly, thank you Lit Quick Strut and Foglifter for having me. And thank you Foglifter especially for your generosity and dedication in supporting and amplifying queer and trans writers. I know I'm one of those beneficiaries, as he just mentioned. I'm so honored and humbled that in addition to having a piece published in the new issue of Journal, Foglifter will also be releasing my chapbook, The Way Back, and I have postcards you can pick up. Quick plug for my book. The launch celebration is on November 10th, so you'll find more info in the postcard. Please pick it up. You can find me or also on the table where Louisa is. On that note, today I'll be sharing two poems as they are both quite short. They were written as part of a series in which I'm exploring ideas of citizenship and kinship of the queer diaspora through the interrogation of laws and languages. And this first one is called Multilingual. To speak the language you're now most fluent in, while recognizing it's not the first or even the second one that echoes on walls of your childhood home, and dream in a tongue that is not your mother's, a freshwater river passing through foreign soil, seeking its own level in a salty bed, forever patching the breach in your speech that spills the birthmark of your origin. Must you choose between husband or son? Is to know multiple languages and sentenced to use just one. So as you can gather, I grew up hearing and speaking multiple languages. The funny thing is, I use each one depending on who I was with and where. At home, I would speak in Mandarin or our local dialect, which is Hokkien, with my family. And in school, the national language of Bahasa Indonesia, where I'm from, is the default with my teachers and classmates. Later on, I would speak English to speak it with mostly other Western educated friends. And in my experience, these groups and settings rarely overlap. Not surprisingly then, these languages become emblems of my different selves, with each one inhabiting very distinct and separate world. As a queer Asian immigrant, I sometimes feel as though this language is symbolic of my own confusion sometimes, or pressure, having to choose between these identities. But it's through writing this series that I've come to realize that this is, of course, a false dichotomy. That there is no need to disavow one in favor of another, as in speaking English does not negate my identity as being Chinese, or being Indonesian doesn't have to come at the expense of me, of my queerness. So in the next piece, I'm deliberately returning to the site of this rupture, fracture, leaning on the wisdom embedded in my mother tongue in an attempt to integrate all of my disparate selves without, hopefully, compromising any of them. It's called Speaking of Love, 谈情说爱. Falling in love in Mandarin is to talk love. And dating is literally a conversation of love. How? Have I not seen this before? But of course, how even then I'd whisper for hours into ears glued to phones and scribble breathlessly, gushing promises of forever and ever more. Printing on color papers, laminating them into bookmarks as evidence of our doomed yearnings and exercise in anguished sufferings. What did I know then? We were but puppies in training, learning lines to a Romeo and Juliet kind of forbidden affair, dress rehearsing a demise that any burgeoning queer kid in the 90s can intuit as future. Selling out packed houses, a lifetime run of inevitable tragedy. Return to the court of Shakespeare's sonnets and Neruda's poems. Love is language, and not simply metaphor or an overused self-help term. So catch your words as they spill out in exchanges with yourself and others. Watch them well and care for them, or love will just as easily fall out of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edward. That was beautiful. What a way to start the night. And I cannot wait to hear more on November 10th at El Rio. Our next speaker, Wayme Collins-Kloba, is a Black artist, performer, writer, and culture critic from San Juan, Puerto Rico. She received her MFA in poetry from the California College of Arts. Her poems are forthcoming or have recently appeared in Samovar and La Piel del Arrecife. Her fiction has appeared in The Dark magazine and in the Akashic Books Dubby Thursday series of Caribbean stories. Please join me in welcoming Wayme Collins-Kloba.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome to this space. I'd also like to thank Gunawan for starting us off with such a wonderful reading. And I'd like to thank everyone who's facilitated the creation of this issue and the creation of this space as well. Today I will be reading 2 poems. They are also part of a series, and they explore issues of Puerto Rican identity as related to the geographical space and also the social implications of being in the space that has been colonially impacted by several territories and several languages as well. So the first one, titled Redacted Notes for an Utopia. Such a gentling, sleeping in past biblical times, markered and prophesied by men. I wake the soft middle, an archipelago, all of us vertebrae. I recognize the neighbor cellularly. Yes, we are the same system. You say, bow your head, and I do. Tu me bañas. You wash me in the shadow of angels. I love my lover's appetite. Augusto, the dimension of little beasts. Wherever there is light to be seen, lush skin matter breaks in runny syllables, in the language of hands. We bathe the children in the kitchen sink. My brown-skinned, intuitive girls sweat in cities where women crouch to domino rhythms and weave up the mundillo. En los bordes lands of la lengua de los astros, through you in my spored body, hollow sounds heard over normal lung tissue, over solid areas such as bones. This we hold is so precious and dear. Rain licking the sky. And then my second poem, all of the text is found in Diane Brand's A Map to the Door of No Return. It's a collection of essays about her identity as a Caribbean woman who's living in diaspora and coming back to the island and thinking about all of these disjuncts and thinking about also all of the different levels of privilege that exist. Her work is inspiring. She's also a poet. So, captive and inhabited. Water is another country. The rims of my eyes burn red, overwhelmed as all land overwhelms me. Oysters, sargasso, goat, coconut milk, and red snapper. As through heat waves across a vast empty space, you are already mythic, where it is always twilight, whitewashed over the sea. The people. I notice their hands, rough, bony, scarifications mirrored in scarifications. Bare feet burn on the asphalt and the rain. Forest road is humid and long. This is not a desperate place. It is still a place, but I saw everyone who would die later that day. The skin dry and flaky, the ocean and the planet it weeps around. All hips held to laugh, we in disarray, and the ochre, orange rock mannered. The man from the oldest city in the world and I are shaking. With laughter, I notice eyes like eyes waking up. He only had cask rum, he says. An oily, pungent, potent, uncured extract. Muddy, weedy water, blood in the sea. Elsewhere is not a bad place. It is simply elsewhere. You've heard it described as an island. The harbor filled with colorful boats, uncontrollable passion, mad rages, and damage. All enclosures prison-like, sunlight in this desert. Molten obelisks, walls of volcanic mud jagging out into blessing, and the ocean voluminous, swift and chaotic ablutions. It is a sweet country, for a moment. The water, the fish, and the fisherman, up to his arms in blood.
Thank you so much, Wayne. We're so privileged to be able to hear your work. Our next reader, Gina Hay, is a Dutch writer from Curaçao, currently based in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Her poetry and prose appear in Prism, International Glam Cult, Grain Magazine, and elsewhere. Her debut chapbook, I Float Like a Bad Girlfriend, is available through Rahila's Coast Press. Gina likes mean lesbians, prophecies, and share. Please join me in welcoming Gina Hay.
Hello, nice to meet everyone. Thank you so much. God, the list just goes on and on, right? Strut and Litquake, and of course the wonderful team at Foglifter, everyone reading tonight and all the contributors. It's so cool that there's just such a wealth of people facilitating this work. It's so exciting. So, a little thing about me, a little anecdote icebreaker, is that I am editing my bio that I use like ceaselessly without end. It's like my boulder that I push up the hill. And recently I put Cher in there to replace, in this like aspirational, hopeful move, I replaced Cher. It used to be train derailments. Because I really love like documentation of train derailments that have happened, and some of them are just really nasty. But Cher seems like a much more hopeful note, so that's exciting. I'm reading the first part to the short story of mine that is featured in this issue. The story is called Factory Living. 1. At the start of each workday, the women in Carmen's lodging walk into the factory in a single file line. In the locker room, there are clothing racks lined with white coveralls, the shelves stacked with white cloth hoods, white cotton gloves, and rolled up red belts with plastic buckles. These are referred to as bunny suits. Microchip production requires cleanliness. Carmen requires cleanliness. Every day she sits at her microscope and checks batches of microchips. In some, the transistors don't connect. These are faulty. She marks this in her log, faulty. Her workstation desktop computer contains a working microchip that does as designed every time. It is the tool that weeds out stragglers. Every week, Carmen meets her quota. A bus pass is deposited onto her company identification card. To Carmen, it is a dead square of her face clipped to her breast pocket. In the picture, she wears her bunny suit and her expression is slack. Carmen slips the faulties into her pocket, then at night out of her bunny pocket and into the back pocket of her jeans. This is a ritual she eventually came to allow herself. But Carmen sheds her bunny suit with reluctance every time. At the factory housing, the bunks lined like those in military barracks, she stows the faulties under her mattress. The women only talk to one another in brief glances that are always torn away. When someone scowls, Carmen scowls back. When someone trips in their single file line, the line splits at its head and circumvents around them. Carmen only talks when necessary. There is a note in Carmen's bunk today. It reads, "More employees hired. Please accommodate our new employees." The single file line into the factory extends now and more people trip every day. The first week, someone bumps into Carmen during the procession. She doesn't turn her head, but feels someone's breath catch on her shoulder. A hand spreads across her upper back, its middle finger caught at the start of her neck. She stands motionless until it regains its balance and pulls itself off of her. The bunks are all filled now with respective employees, and not one bed will go empty. This is how a microchip is made. Harvest sand, turn sand into silicon crystals, shape silicon crystals into thin wafers. Implement some billion transistors for every chip. Connect them, layer them, test them. Is the room clean? The room has to be dustless and tunneling air. Employees have to enter the facility through an airlock to keep the room perfectly clean. Oxidize your thin wafer in your perfectly clean room with perfectly clean air. Fix a light-sensitive layer onto your chip and see how vulnerable it is. It is untouchable and tender. It is sensitive and prone to harm. Now expose it to the air you withheld from it. Remove layers, expose it to impurities, apply layers, then strip them away. Strip, peel, polish. Cut out the individual chips from your wafer, attach the terminals, those insect leg metal prongs that allow electricity to ebb through. Microchips are born from the push and pull of tension and release. They thrive on it. After it is born, it is contained in the room, in the grip of the machine. The machine is contained in the factory, which is contained in the fields around it, infinity miles of dry soil that will never host a crop, a cluster of trees. The microchip lays at his heart. There is so much room in the world. The microchip lays in the deepest, tiniest, most compressed fold of space. At the factory housing, Carmen reaches under her mattress and grabs a fistful of faulties. She brings her hand, filled with docile weight, to her mouth and breathes into it. She admires these almost perfect, elaborate things that lay mute and stranded under her bed. She thumbs at them as if they were something feeble and desperate for her protection. She holds them up against her, like people cradle newborns on bare chests. They're incapacitated, she thinks, and cursed. Carmen doesn't remember much of her life before the factory, but sometimes her body seizes with a foggy memory of city life, how everything used to be armfuls of disconnected threads that overflowed and spilled from her grip. Carmen once worked somewhere else, probably. She lived in a city with traffic cones and geese and children and their grandmothers. When she was an infant, she was probably held by people who sometimes lifted her up out of a bassinet and put her back into it. People who owned things like cell phones and expensive underwear and ice scrapers. She pictures herself in her room, in her house, hammering a nail into a wall. The factory provides her with all she requires. She works. She eats what the canteen serves. She wears her bunny suit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gina. For what it's worth, I too share more than train wrecks, and I can't wait to hear more of your work. Our next reader, Andy Bandyopadhyay, is the son of a political science and a geography professor. He holds a PhD in public policy from the Georgia Institute of Technology. He's a bisexual trans man, an alumnus of the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus, where we perform together, and a Brooklyn-based writer. He writes about all things queer and trans for Extra Magazine. Andy and his husband Raj are in the process of immigrating to Canada. Please join me in welcoming Andy Bandyopadhyay.
Thank you, Foglifter. Thank you, Strut. Thank you, crew and audience. This is an excerpt from Thank You for Your Interest in Canada. From Do Not Reply at cic.gc.ca, Thursday, May 12th, 2022. We are waiting to hear from you. You are? We applied for permanent residency 15 months ago. I submitted my fingerprints, my blood, my urine, my trans queer body. Please, please let me seek solace on your soil. Please don't make me stay here. Please don't keep me here, witnessing. We need something from you to continue processing your application. Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada needs updated police reports. They want to make sure we haven't been arrested since the last reports 21 months ago. We stayed away as our friends marched in protest after protest. We haven't been arrested because we can't afford to be. I want to tell you about our weddings and receptions. Atlanta, Kolkata, Houston, Mumbai. The first wedding is the real one, the one we designed for ourselves, a small ceremony on the rooftop of our downtown Atlanta loft in 2010. We vowed to be nerds together forever, as witnessed by the secular preacher we hire from Yelp, and my parents, grandparents, and Raj's dad. My mom makes the cake, and Raj's dad asks my grandma to compare the rules of cricket and baseball. I am a PhD student, and we have a small budget, and it is the best. Even today, I wouldn't change a thing. The Kolkata wedding and the Mumbai reception are for Raj's parents. Every event is for them to show their neighbors that they've made it. Their only son made it to America and got a PhD and an engineering job and a wife in a giant house. And yes, she is white, and yes, American, and has no caste, but look, she wears a sari and goes to temple with us and speaks Hindi even. And yes, she is learning Bengali too. And look, she's getting her PhD. And look, our child is going to be rich. Our grandchildren are going to be rich. The Houston reception is for friends from school, for the community who saw us fall in love in the first place. By the time we get Raj's green card and my overseas citizen of India card, we are more married than anyone we know, having affirmed our vows so many times. All this paperwork is possible because I am legally female at the time, a bisexual queer, an egg in waiting, a person who has no idea I am trans, a wife with a husband. I was lucky to discover my inner gay man in 2016 and to begin transition in 2017. If my husband and I had met 40 years earlier, our union would have been illegal because we committed the crime of marrying someone of a different race in America. If I were 20 years younger, my parents would be under investigation for child abuse because they committed the crime of supporting their trans child in Texas. If I had started testosterone and had top surgery and changed my legal sex 15 years earlier, our sleeping together would have been illegal because we committed the crime of homosexual activity in Texas. If I had transitioned 7 years earlier, our union would have been illegal because we committed the crime of marrying someone of the same sex in America. If I had transitioned 7 years earlier, our Indian marriage would have been illegal, and we could have been arrested for having sex in India. Thoroughly married, Raj and I move out west to San Francisco in 2014 in search of more bicycle infrastructure and more queers and more artists and year-round mild weather. We land in an attic with exposed wooden beams and gleaming hardwood floors in the heart of the Castro, 2 blocks that way. I start to meet more out trans people, start to feel inklings of my gender shift, start to realize that maybe I need to embody the queer men I see out and about. Raj starts to meet more artists, starts to take his photography more seriously, starts to realize that maybe he needs to embody the artist full-time. In 2015, I removed my uterus. I don't want any more 21-day periods. I don't want to become pregnant ever. Most of all, I don't want the state to force me to carry a child. I am from Texas, and I know that abortion bans are evergreen possibilities. By mid-2016, I've come out to myself and to Raj as a queer man. We've committed to stay together through my transition. On the eve of the American presidential election, we stay up late with apple cider, ready to celebrate our country's first ever female president. Instead, state after state goes to the man who said he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue without losing votes. Would I still be able to access medical care under the new administration? Would I still be able to change my papers? We walk the Castro, mouths agape in shock and eyes down in grief. Soon, the protests begin, and with them, some sense of collective action rises. We are in California. The state legislature protects access to trans healthcare. I come out at work and my gay CEO celebrates me. I come out at my gym and my trainer high-fives me and helps me strengthen my pecs. I come out to my parents and they are shocked that I was worried about their support. I start testosterone, have top surgery, and change my paperwork while I still can. Then an armed militia attempts to kidnap and execute Michigan's governor. A mob ransacks the Capitol and calls for the hanging of the vice president. This feels like India, Raj says. I did not bust my ass to land in another third world country. A scholar of civil wars around the globe and across history pens a New York Times bestseller explaining that if you analyze America the way you would analyze Ukraine or the Ivory Coast or Venezuela, you see that America is fucked. That America is now in the twilight zone between democracy and autocracy. I send the book to my dad, a political science professor. Meanwhile, there's a bill in Missouri to make trans healthcare illegal for adults. I cannot go to Missouri. The Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade by saying women's right to abortion wasn't in the Constitution. Trans people weren't in the Constitution either. At least I had my histo. Clarence Thomas's opinion calls for the court to overturn Obergefell, Lawrence v. Texas, and Griswold v. Connecticut, too. He leaves out Loving v. Virginia, the precedent that applies to his own marriage. I need to stay married to my husband. I am leaving the country.
Thank you so much, Andy. Please take me with you, or at least come back and read for us often. Our next reader, Simone Zapata, is a poet and educator from San Jose, California. She recently co-curated the LA-based exhibition Tense Renderings, The Will and Won't of Spatial Logics, which interrogates the motivations, conditions, and limitations of maps and map making. She received her MFA in creative writing from the California Institute of the Arts. Please join me in welcoming Simone Zapata.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to Foglifter, to Strut. I'm going to be reading a poem called A Cauldron of Bats, and it's written after Aria D. Matthews' Descent of the Composer. It's hard to name how, or more precisely when, the body becomes a cauldron of bats. Talons clutching to a pit like the tongue risks losing its first language. This name is pronounced as my mother's fairest trial, flown out from the caverns. We position dormant in the dark, and by dark we mean among the stalactites, lapping up our salt with a soothe when the snap doubles back, leaving our lungs as a pulse in pursuit of the signal. Thin skin to the sky and then lift to this morning in bed, half awake, where I am no owner, only illuminated bougainvillea. Paper petals to the window, top sheet in slow rhythm with the sleep of my loved one. Do I know this for sure? No, I am no seeing creature. I am millions of them awake in the dark. And by dark, we mean acoustic. Potassium fingers distort our migration into swarm. I have yet to prove the echo doesn't leave the mouth. No, sometimes the signal consumes the sender. One massive mechanical wave cracking upon fine lines of consent. We know to hunt in the dark, but I still consider sonar an unreliable medium. How I strike a match to something ahead, and then it's on fire. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Simone. We're so lucky to be able to have your piece at Foglifter. Our next reader, Hernan de la Cruz Ramos, is a 27-year-old emo boy that likes sandwiches, long drives, and hella music. He was born and raised on Munsi Lenape land, but he currently lives in Ohlone Chochenyo land and teaches on Ohlone Ramaytush land, also known as Northern New Jersey, Oakland, and San Francisco, respectively. He has 3 poems published in the Night Heron Barks. Please join me in welcoming Hernan de la Cruz Ramos.
Hello. Thank you everybody for being here. I'm grateful to be around such great artists. And shout out to our interpreter. I'm gonna do one. I was raised like very Christian, and although my parents nor I practice anymore, I still find myself going to the language of sacrifice and devotion. So this poem is about that and about bondage. Now I lay here, agape, arms spread, wings or Christ, whatever you want to call it, and wait, hoping that my audacious openness gets you to climb in. I am of the body, all of its aches and whistles, every burn and displaced bristle, the cracks between my knuckles. I'm so tired of the body. How many ways can I make desire and hunger into jaw and sand before they mean nothing? How often has love gone nameless? I want to be your anything. The space above my knee, the perfect pedestal to tie your shoes when you feel lazy. Carry you in this mess of bones and flesh when you feel heavy. Set me ablaze to make good lighting for your face. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hernan, for just your beautiful words and also teaching us that you can't break free of the podium. So that is also aspirational for me. Our next speaker, Lydia Elias, is a queer Ethiopian-American woman based in Oakland, California. Her work includes poetry and personal essays. She has performed spoken word around the Bay Area. She received her Bachelor of Arts from Brown University. She enjoys spending time in nature and engaging in community organizations in the East Bay. Please join me in welcoming Lydia Elias.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you, Strut and Litquake, and it's so great to see Foglifter staff, because I think a lot of it's been email and everything, so great to see everyone in person and to share space with everyone. So I'll be reading an excerpt from an essay that I wrote, and this is a braided essay with different threads woven together, and it's called How to Do a 3-Strand Twist. Before you begin your twist, be sure to wash and condition your hair thoroughly, twice with shampoo and once with conditioner. Brush your conditioner-filled hair with a comb in sections. Wash out the conditioner. I never knew how safe home could feel like until I lived with you. What it felt like to want to come home every day. What it felt like to wait on the couch and hear the key turn and see your face and feel my whole body glow and smile. I did not know I could be this happy. I did not know I could feel this safe, but I did with you. After you leave the shower, you must have the 4 following materials to properly twist your hair. A Denman brush, a boar bristle brush, Cantu's curl defining cream, and a hair oil of your choice. There is always so much happening on campus: classes, parties, extracurriculars, midterms, exams, and events. So much freedom. More freedom than either of us knew what to do with. I was scared, and so were you. I never told you, though. You never told me either. Being away from home, where you always felt safe, terrified you. Being away from my home, where I never felt safe, terrified me. We were okay as long as we were together. We watched stand-up comedy in the apartment. We laughed until tears fell. We cuddled. We talked about everything and nothing. I was your home away from home. You were my first real home. I do not want to write about my mother. I do not want to write about my dreams and my fear of those dreams never coming true. I do not want to write about the time my parents betrayed me. I do not want to write about the grief that has not left me for years. You will work through the twists in sections. Put half of your hair up in a ponytail while you work on the other half. Split the half that you're working on in two. First, focus on the half that is closest to your face. Take a dollop of Cantu in your hands, rub it together, and spread it through the first section of your hair, from the ends to the roots. Rake through your hair with your fingers, then brush it through it, ends to roots, using the Denman brush. You cried a lot. I didn't. You cried so much, and I cried so little that I wondered why that was. I watched as you furrowed your dark eyebrows and ejected whimpers from your throat as tears fell and parts of your face, mostly your nose, began to redden. Why couldn't I cry like you? Why couldn't I let it out? If I did, it would kill me, I would think. That scared me, so I stopped asking myself. I do not want to write about making myself small so my mother could feel worthy. I do not want to write about the loneliness I felt when I was with her at her house and the loneliness I feel now in my home. I do not want to write about numbing my emotions since I was 9 years old. I do not want to write about never being good enough for her. Spray or pour the oil onto your scalp in that section only. Massage it in. Put oil onto the ends of that section. Rub it in. Brush again using the Denman brush. After that section is properly moisturized, use the boar bristle brush to brush flat the top of your hair a few times. Shortly after I broke up with my girlfriend at the beginning of the fall semester of our junior year, I knocked on your bedroom door. "It's me, can I come in?" I asked. "Yeah, dude, come in." You quickly responded. You were laying on the extra long twin bed they provided in our on-campus apartment. You began to sit up to make room for me. I sat at the foot of the bed. I wanted to tell you what happened, but I did not know how. I opened my mouth and closed it. I tried again. We broke up. I broke up with her. I gasped, and tears started to fall. I felt the violent wave of emotions begin to release from my body. I looked into your eyes. You quickly took my hand in yours and wrapped your other arm around my body. I immediately relaxed and allowed myself to release more tears, more pain. I do not know if I was crying about the breakup or if I was crying about something else, but I did know that as long as you were holding me, it was okay to let it out. I do not want to write about feelings of hopelessness that have been a theme since I was 12 years old. I do not want to write about the near suicide attempts. I do not want to write about my poor body image, or my mother's poor body image, or my sister's poor body image. I do not want to write about my eating disorder or my mother's eating disorder. Separate the hair into 3 equal strands. You will start by braiding your hair until you see the root of a braid. Loop the most left strand of hair over the middle strand, then loop the most right strand over the middle strand and under the most left strand, and tighten it against your scalp each time. Repeat this 3 times until you see the root of the braid. I had just given my 2-week notice at my job as I walked into the campus of your graduate school. It was strange. I was going to see you after not speaking for 5 months. I felt guilty and ashamed for cutting you off after graduation before we both moved to California, for pushing you away for all of senior year, for being the reason for your tears. But when I asked if I could meet you to talk, you agreed. That had to mean something. I do not want to write about my childhood. I do not want to write about the house that was never a home. I do not want to write about my mother's abuse and mixed messages of love and hurt towards me. I do not want to write about the homophobic Ethiopian culture I was immersed in for years. I do not want to write about the hands wrapped around my neck. I'll stop there for time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lydia. I realized I've never heard a braided essay read aloud before, and you've set the bar so very, very high, so thank you. Our next and final speaker is here, so let me get started. Troy, are you here, in fact? Can you raise your hand? Yeah. Okay, he's here. Okay, great. Okay, here we go. Troy Oakland, aka Troy Tarkington Rocket, works within theater, film, and digital media to explore spiritualities, intimacies, and self-preservation practices created by queer and trans communities. He holds a master's in English literature and creative writing and is a Vona Voices and Lambda Literary Fellow, Astrea Lesbian Writers Fund recipient, Theater Bay Area Titan Award winner, and is part of the producer circle with the Queer Women of Color Media Arts Project. Please join us in welcoming Troy Tarkington Rocket.
Okay, y'all, I just need a moment. This is very emotional. It's been the pandemic, so yeah, I transitioned during the pandemic, and yeah, like queer spaces, you know. So I just need to take a moment to take this in, because yeah, I'm understanding that the reason why I'm here, like still alive, is, you know, all of us and how we do such a great job in taking care of each other. So I miss this. This is my first time I'm in a physical space reading poetry since the pandemic started, so I'm very emotional. So it's gonna be running through me, so I'm gonna try to get through this poem, y'all. Yeah, so thank you for being here, and thank you for holding this space, and everyone who's greeted me when I came in. Thank you to Foglifter and just fellow writers that I see in the room. Thank you for those who have shared. Yeah, y'all, let me try to do this without crying. All right, so the first piece that I'll read two pieces. The first piece is the one that's published in this journal, and it's titled, I did not want my dreams to be dreams, but they called them so. A loose-limbed busybody with a mouth that couldn't mouth, and when two lips dared double talk or lip was asking for it. I did not want my dreams to be ruckus. Did not think my dreams at all. Grateful for this womb, for having been born within a womb, a gift of growing things from within, whether they be tall tales or oracles. The sing-song of sorrow, being small amongst the grown folk, how to flit like spark on worsening decay. The promise of becoming ripe, of birthing my own gender from between these legs. I look back to how easy it was to be swooped up and lovingly placed on a hip when suddenly in pain from a quick meeting with cement. How these quick-witted, no shit-taking women could soften. Little one, what happened? Where are you hurt? My full cheek wet with salted alarm, pressed firmly against the flesh. So forgiving, I claim myself sinless, as if to reinforce the security my misstep could not. Let me kiss it. Hush now. You all right, you gonna be just fine. I did not want my dreaming to unclothe me front the congregation, but there I was, a thing my parents never dreamed. And no one dared swoop me from despair. I learned to fly in my fleeing, like how innocence is thrown up and catches wind. These things sometimes get hold of wind, right on out like a cough, and sometimes be like bile pulling at a belly, and you just there heaving, waiting for that settling into silence that say it done pass, but don't. There are no exit signs for grief, only relapse and windstorm. Keep still and let the thunder quack it quiet. Listen to the bones the dirt has collected. Watch the eyes rolling from socket, from out the soil, seem like the rain going up backwards. The eyes watching me, then catch me see and nod back into the ground to nestle in the harvest. And grief is just another thing to digest. I can't stand when it rains. Don't like the smell of fresh soil and the wet. Don't like that the sky can weep, change itself, and then forget. Okay, y'all, I'm still standing. Cool, so I'll read one last poem. You know, I just want to share, it's just so funny, you know, looking the way that I look. I just have to laugh about it. I know, sorry, y'all. Like, being a man, and other men, you know, they come up and they want to talk about manly things. And they play this game called, like, man, you ain't man enough until you know. And so I thought I'd try that too. And I was like, yeah, you're not man enough until your like dick falls off in public, you know. And yeah, they were really receptive. They're like, oh, dude. Yeah. So, but this poem is not about that. I just had to share it. But yeah, you gotta, yeah. Check out, make sure the design is right, you know, harnesses, you know. Okay. So, this last poem is called A Moon Memory of You. And yeah, the writing is so small. Okay, here we go, let's zoom in. A moon memory of you. The last time I kissed you was 10 years ago. The memory brings you into my room again, takes me on the road trip we took, back to the room we rented and the twin bed that we shared, us young and not touching, then your hand alive and my breathing bundled. How thankful I was for the secrecy of hotel bedroom walls, how that year we didn't hold hands in public, yet felt always beside one another. Since that quiet night on the bench, when you brought your body close enough for me to know we had crossed the distance from friendship to another thing, and the sky brightened while the moon raised its head to look upon more clearly, and I knew the night would always remind me of you. Your eyes, your hair beneath covering, how we slept while not sleeping, how I came to your body holding on and never braved it. As it is, during moonrise, I often think of you, and every face that turns, I find myself still looking for the then unmarried woman who dared traverse the landscape of a body unlike and like her own. For first times and harnessed truths, for those we burned in our bending of tradition, for the sun who held her tongue to the night who sang into our dreaming. Let us always wake knowing ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Troy. I love it when people get up here nervous and then just give you amazing art with an interlude about dicks falling off. So that's Thank you so much for joining us. It's a joy and honor to publish such incredible queer and trans writers. Don't forget to buy your own copy of this fantastic issue. You can see the beautiful cover being held up in the back there, or subscribe to our journal. Find us at the back. Please send us your work before the close of submissions, November 1st. Please complete your audience surveys and drop them off in the back. If you were a reader tonight, would you please stand as you're able? Can we give our readers one more round of applause? Thank you again for supporting Foglifter and these writers, and have a queer-tastic evening.